Suchita, we can start.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sucheta and I'm a psychological counselor at the Symbiosis Center for Emotional Wellbeing, or SCEW. Today, we have a YouTube live session. This is called as Yeh Merry Family or Yeh Merry Family. Can't live with or cannot live without. We're observing this in commemoration of the International Day of Families as observed by the United Nations every year on the 15th of May. However, since this year, 15th of May happens to fall on a Sunday, we here at Symbiosis wanted to do this session on a Friday so that on Sunday, people can enjoy the social media posts that go around in accordance with this event. So today's topic might be sensitive in nature because we are discussing families and family interactions. This topic may contain ideas or content that may be sensitive to someone. So in case of any distress or any emotional triggers between our students, our faculty, staff, and our general audience, we recommend that you reach out to a psychological counselor on campus or any mental health professional whom you would know. Today we are joined by our expert, Mr. Narinder Kingar. Narinder Kingar is the founder of a mental health NGO called Talk to Me. He is a practicing clinical psychologist and a therapist working in Mumbai, and he's been in this career for the last 34 years. His interest in mental health, coupled with the lack of awareness or the lack of services for poor people, enabled him to start this NGO. Sir has worked with several schools, colleges, and has been a guest trainer or a resource person for several large corporates. He has been an honorary clinical psychologist at the Holy Family Hospital and a consultant clinical psychologist at Sir H.N. Reliance Hospital in Mumbai. He is also partnered with the Cozy Clinic, which is an exclusive psychiatric hospital in Mumbai. Set up to cater to the poor and focus on clients who cannot afford counseling or psychological testing or psychiatric consultation. And these services are carried out with utmost professionalism with an emphasis on mental health awareness. Sir, we welcome you to this event. I'm going to hand it over to you now.
Thank you, Sucheta. That's very kind of you. I think it was a very elaborate introduction, not really needed, but thank you very much. I think it's been wonderful to be here. So I thank Symbiosis for giving us this opportunity to talk to students at the platform across wherever you all are based out of. So thank you. And I think since this is being kind of hosted for International Day of Families, we want to kind of start off with the family's role and functioning in our life. I think when you say Yeh Merry Family, the emphasis, I think the title is wonderful. When you say Merry or Mary in Hindi and English, I think the pronunciation and the lingo really implies a lot. So when you say can't live with, cannot live without, I think it speaks the language of a lot of us, where we feel that family is the most important part of our life, and where we feel that we struggle with whatever we struggle with in our respective families. So without much ado, let me just get started off. So along with families, we actually, instead of going into family therapy or going to details of family, what we thought was we'll talk about transactional analysis. Now, this is a theory of psychology which a lot of people study. As we go ahead, we don't want to complicate it too much. I know that we are talking to students. We want to keep it simple. So this is a very simple theory of psychology. And I think if you understand and you start applying it in your life, it will be good for all of you. So we will talk. This is, as the title says, an introduction to transactional analysis. We're not going to become experts. It's just an understanding of what really it is. Now, here, when since it's about families, we'll try to apply this to families. And my starting point is we are trying to start with a humorous thing, because I think humor is a very important part of life. And that's one way in which you can connect with people, connect with situations around. So many times, in our own families, when our families make a joke at us, we struggle with that, because We really don't want families to make fun of us. But that's also a way of bonding with the family or bonding in within the family unit. So sometimes it's important that we also see the lighter side. Nobody likes to be made fun of, but I think we need to look at it as a way of integrity. And sarcasm is a really great way of connecting also at times. So if you wake up early on a particular day and your dad or mom says, "Aajkal jaldi utne lag gaye tum log," it's sarcastic, but actually the message is that, well, I'm noticing you, I'm paying attention to what you're doing. So I think so we need to understand that many times it's important to remain or hold on to the sense of humor in our family to allow the communication to happen and not take it too much to heart. Now, there are different kinds of descriptions and rules in every family. I think nobody knows this more than a girl who's getting married and going to another family. So all girls who get married say कि हमारे यहाँ तो ऐसे होता था. Like in my family, we used to have breakfast, lunch, dinner, and over here there seems to be no dinner. I mean, everybody just has only breakfast and lunch and evening snacks. So I think we need to really figure out that every family has its own rules, has its own lingo, has its own way of functioning, has its own style and all that. So I think whenever we talk about families, we need to understand. But every family will kind of emphasize certain things from childhood. Tell the truth, treat other people with respect, no arguing with your parents, which I think is no longer true. Respect each other's property, I think very, very important. And look for ways to be kind and helpful to each other. Now, I cannot highlight this more. I think when I work with all age groups, and I find that younger people are becoming less and less kind, and people are becoming more and more self-absorbed. So I think it's very important that some of these ideas which we learn in our families are held on to, and they become a way of life. So many times families will insist that you follow the rules, and a lot of conflicts happen whenever you are told to do something without having a point of escape. Like you have to do it whether you like it or not. I think that becomes a issue of conflict in many families. But let us accept and understand that rules are made for social functioning. Rules are made so that things work out for the larger majority. Once in a while, it may not work out for you, but yeah, it needs to really work out for most of us. Uh, the next thing that I want to focus on is there are each family has different family dynamics. By dynamics, we mean that things operational functioning in every family. So sometimes every in a family, the good child is rewarded. So a good child is made to become better and better and better. And sometimes in a family where a child is misbehaving, it is that the child who's misbehaving may end up actually getting more attention than a good child. Now, most families may not be aware of this because it happens that the family is only focused on how they are doing things without understanding that this impact or dynamics on day-to-day functioning. So if you feel that my younger brother or older brother or younger sister or older sister are getting more attention, it will create a dynamic situation where the younger brother and older brother may have issues. But I think families need to pay attention to dynamics. That's very, very critical. And I think that's one part that again leads to conflicts in many families. So let's try to understand really what is transactional analysis. So as I said earlier, it's a theory of personality and a systematic way of therapy for personal growth and personal change. So here the focus in how can I change, how can I grow as a person. So this is not for the entire family. So if you're talking about TA or transactional analysis, we have to look at for yourself what you can do for yourself so that you can have a better functioning or better understanding or better relationships with people around. Second, it gives us a picture of how people are psychologically structured. So there's just like other therapists or other psychological theories have given us ideas. TA has its own ideas, and it's a theory of communication as well as child development. So we get an idea of how human beings develop over the years. Also, because our primary concern here is communication. Human beings understand others only through communication. So it's also a theory of communication. Now, the unique part about TA is a concept, what we call as life script. Life script, as the name suggests, is that everybody has a script. We all have an internal script which we adhere to. That means without realizing that, this is the way I think, most of us have certain behavioral patterns, certain emotional reactions, or certain thinking patterns. And that is what is all about life script. As we go ahead, I will explain that. So we need to understand that people repeat their life scripts again and again and again without realizing. And sometimes these patterns may be self-defeating and painful. I can give a very simple example that when a person gets married, he or she may expect that my partner will behave a certain way. And fortunately or unfortunately, let's say the partner doesn't behave a certain way. And that marriage ends up in a separation or a divorce. Now, we normally expect that people will learn from these experiences. But you'll find that as and when this male or female gets married again, to the new relationship, they'll bring the same life script. They'll expect this new partner also to behave or handle life in a certain way. So we need to understand that if we understand this concept of life script, we'll understand how we can kind of behave more positively or keep on evaluating our own behaviors, our own thought processes. Now, here is the concept of life script. Each of us in childhood writes a life story for themselves. So this story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. We write the basic plot in our infant years, even before we are old enough to speak more than a few words. So the key here is that we think that children don't know or children don't understand what's happening. But here the theory is talking about that most of us have already formed how our life is going to pan out. As we grow older, we add more details to the story. Most of it has been written by the age of 7. So transactional analysis theory saying that by the age of 7, most of us have actually formed a script in our head of how our life is going to go. We may revise it further during adolescence. So as you can understand, here it is not that the script is written by adolescents, but it is revised during adolescence. As grown-ups, we are no longer usually aware of the life story we have written for ourselves, yet we are likely to live it out faithfully. So without being aware of it, we set up our life so that we move towards a final scene as decided upon by us as infants. Now, this unaware life story in TA is known as a life script. Now, there's a similarity here to Freud. Freud had spoken about the unconscious or the subconscious and the conscious. Here, the TA, Eric Berne, is talking about that there is an element of unconscious without using the word unconscious. And that is what propagates or motivates you to behave in a particular fashion. So now many of us may believe that this is all bullshit or this is not really true or this may apply to other people, not necessarily to me. But if you actually examine, for example, I'll give a very simple example here. There are people who constantly earn money and then they invest it in bad situations and they lose all money and they earn money all over again. This may happen 5, 7, 10 times in their lives. Now you may wonder, how can this person do this again and again and again? And he's giving money to others, loaning money to others. People are eating up his money, not returning money. He's giving money again to another friend. So I think if you look at your own life, you may figure out that there are certain examples in your own life which may constitute a life script. And if you find such things, you need to consciously work on it and move towards a place of understanding yourself better. Now, what is the philosophy of TA? Now, TA has certain basic philosophical assumptions, which is about the way people are, what life is, and what are the objectives of change. Every time I change, what are my objectives? So let's look at a few philosophical assumptions of TA. The first philosophical assumption is that people are okay. That means that you and I both are worthy, have value as human beings, and should be treated with dignity. That means that I cannot say, okay, I'm special, you're stupid. I cannot say that just because I'm rich, I'm much more worthy than you. Or I cannot say that, okay, I have more education and you're not educated, so your dignity is going to be compromised. We need to treat people just like we treat ourselves as people of worth, value, and dignity. We need to treat others as that. Also, the thing is that I accept myself and I accept you as you. The second part is that I cannot say that you have to live by my standard. So you have to live by the way I want you to live. You live the way you think you want to live, and I live the way I think I want to live. And both I have to learn to accept. This is a statement of essence rather than behavior. That means you have to basically accept it and internalize it. It's not that just that you pay lip service to it. Yeah, yeah, everybody is okay, but you don't really believe in it. So we have to learn to treat all human beings with the same dignity. I think that's really very, very important in today's day and time. The second theory or the assumption is that everybody has the capacity to think. Now we may say that there are people who are slow learners, there are people who are intellectually slow, there are people who have not undergone education, there are people who don't learn as well as we do, there are people who don't memorize as well as I do, there are people who don't earn as much as I do. So there may be differential aspects to life, but here the theory that everybody has the capacity to think, and people decide their own destiny, and these decisions can be changed. So when I say that everybody has the capacity to think, what it implies that people may think differently. They may think in a unique fashion. They may think in a way that they want their life to develop or open up. So there are people who choose to live in cities because, well, cities have more job opportunities. And there are people who choose to live in the village because villages have more family bonding or values. Now, I cannot say that living in the city is better than living in the village, or living in the village is better than living in the city. Each person has their own choices to make, and it's okay with whatever choices we make. And each individual also has to understand that we'll have to live with the consequence of what they decide. Now, most of us forget that sometimes we just make decisions without understanding that those decisions will have consequences. So I was talking to somebody yesterday, and he said that I gave a resignation letter to my boss, and this is the fourth time when I resigned kar diya, and my boss has not accepted my resignation letter. Now I asked him, "Are you happy about it or not?" बोला नहीं, 4 बार दे दिया और चारों बार उसने रिजेक्ट कर दिया. I am going to give a resignation letter again. Then I asked him, suppose this is fifth time when you give the resignation letter and your boss accepts it. How do you think you're going to react? And there was a pin drop silence. The reason for that pin drop silence is, I think in their head, the person actually decided fifth time also, if I give, boss say, no, 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 I don't want you to leave. I want you to be here. So I really want to highlight the point over here that every decision that you make, every action that you take will have consequences, whether we like it or not. And this is the key part we all need to, I think a lot of young people need to understand that if you decide to leave home and live alone, where living alone will have a consequence to you. If you decide to live in the family rather than go and live alone, that also will have. So every decision has consequences. So there's no such thing as that I will take a decision and there'll be no consequences to it. I'm going to play a short video over here for all of you. And this will make a lot of things very clear to everybody, because I think this is an interesting way of understanding the concept.
What is transaction?
Navinder, sir, I'm not able to hear the video. Could you please make sure the sound is enabled? Hello, Narendra sir. Please enable the audio of the video. We cannot hear anything.
What is transactional analysis? Transactional analysis was founded by Eric Berne, and the famous parent adult child theory is still being developed today and has become one of the most accessible theories of modern psychology. Whether you're in business, a parent, a social worker, or interested in personal development, Eric Berne's transactional analysis theories and those of his followers will enrich your dealings with people and your understanding of yourself. Philosophical assumptions of transactional analysis are: people are okay, everyone has the capacity to think, people decide their own destiny, and these decisions can be changed. What are transactions and ego states? Berne's starting point was that when two people encountered each other, one of them will speak to the other. This is called the transaction stimulus. The reaction from the other person he called as the transaction response. The person sending the stimulus is called the agent, and the person who responds is called the respondent. Transaction analysis became the method of examining the transaction wherein I do something to you and you do something back. According to Burns, everyone is made up of three ego states: 1, the parent; 2, the adult; and 3, the child. The parent is our ingrained voice of authority, absorbed conditioning, learning, and attitudes from when we were young. We were conditioned by our real parents, our teachers, older people, next door neighbors, aunts and uncles, Father John and Jax. Our parent is made up of a huge number of hidden and overt recorded playbacks, typically embodied by phrases and attitudes starting with how to, under no circumstances, always, and never forget, don't lie, cheat, steal, etc., etc. Our parent is formed by external events and influences upon us as we grow through early childhood. We can change it, but this is easier said than done. The child. Our internal reaction and feelings to external events form the child. This is the seen, hearing, feeling, and emotional body of data within each of us. When anger or despair dominates reason, the child is in control like our parent. We can change it, but it is no easier. The adult. Adults are our ability to think and determine action for ourselves based on received data. If we are to change our parents or child, we must do so through our adult. In other words, we can say that parent is our taught concept of life, adult is our thought, and child is our felt concept of life. When we communicate, we are doing so from one of our own alter ego, the parent, the adult, or the child. Our feelings at the same time determine which one we use, and at any time, something can trigger a shift from one state to another state. When we respond, we are also doing this from one of the three states. And it is in the analysis of these stimuli and responses that the essence of transactional analysis lies. At the core of Burn's theory is the rule that effective transactions, successful communication must be complementary. They must go back from the receiving ego state to the sending ego state. For example, if the stimulus is parent to child, the response must be child to parent, or the transaction is crossed, and there will be a problem between sender and receiver. If the cross transaction occurs, there is an ineffective communication where still either or both parties would be upset. In order for the relationship to continue smoothly, the agent or the respondent must rescue the situation with the complementary transaction. In serious breakdowns, there is no chance of immediately resuming a discussion about the original subject matter. Attention is focused on the relationship. The discussion can only continue constructively when and if the relationship is mended. Here are some simple clues as to the ego state sending the signal. You will be able to see this clearly in others and in yourself. Parent. Angry or impatient body language and expressions like finger pointing, patronizing gestures. Verbal. Always, never, for once and for all. Judgmental words, critical words, patronizing language, posturing language. Beware of the cultural differences in body language or emphasis that appear parental. Child. Physical, emotionally sad expressions, despair, temper tantrums, whining voice, rolling eyes, shrugging shoulders, teasing delight, laughter, speaking behind the hand, raising hand to speak, squirming, and giggling. Verbal, baby talk. I wish, I don't know, I want, I'm gonna, I don't care, oh no, not again, things never go right for me, worst day of my life, bigger, biggest, best. Many superlative words to impress. Adult, physical, attentive, interested, straightforward, tilted head, no threatening, and non threatened. Verbal, why, what, how, who, where and when, how much, in what way. Comparative expressions, reasoned statements, true, false, probably, possibly, I think, I realize, I see, I believe, in my opinion. And remember, when you are observing these ego states, words are merely only a part of the story. To analyze a transaction, you need to see and feel what is being said as well. Only 10% of meaning is in the words spoken, 30% of the meaning is told the way that the words are said, and 60% is in facial expression, gestures, and postures. Transactional analysis is effectively a language within a language. A language of true meaning, feeling, and motive. It can help you in every situation. Firstly, through being able to understand more clearly what is going on, and secondly, by virtue of this knowledge, we give ourselves choices of what ego states to adapt, which signals to sing, and where to send them. This enables us to make the most of all our communications and therefore create, develop, and maintain better relationships. What is transaction?
So I think there was a very simple, interesting video which has covered most of the concepts for us. So as I think by now you all will understand, it's an ego state model. So the key concept as we were understanding is that there are behaviors, there are thoughts, and there are emotions or feelings. So any individual or any human being has could be operating from a parental state, could be operating from a adult state, could be operating from a child state. And depending on which ego state they're operating on, it will impact their language, it will impact their physicality, and also impact or the physical manifestation of what they're thinking and what they're doing, as well as the way it's put forward. So I think we need to be focused on this. So the three ego state which we were touched on in the video were already adult ego state, parent ego state, and the child ego state. Now, so what it really is that so an adult ego state is if I'm behaving, thinking, and feeling in response to what is going on around. That means this is the most stable, most realistic kind of an ego state. And people are focused on what's happening at this point of time. You're not bringing baggage from what has happened before. You're not projecting into the future as to what's going to happen from here. You're not trying to impute motives. You're not trying to understand beyond what is being made available to you. So I think lot of whenever we focus on the adult ego state, the adult ego state takes in all the available information at this point of time and gives a very measured and a very controlled response. Now, the parent ego state is the ideal state, like, what is good, what is the best, what my parents have told me, what I used to do, so on and so forth. That's the parent ego state. And putting forth, if you can look at the body language of the person standing with the hands in the pocket, you'll understand that it's a close thing. That means I'm holding my posture is such that I'm not willing to listen to people around me. Like it's a closed state. Now the child ego state is that I want to go back to what I used to be. Now in other it's a form of regression. Now, for example, a child cries when the child doesn't get what they want. But when we grow older, we are able to express that this is what I want, this is what I think should be given to me, this is what I'm not getting, so on and so forth. And if you break down and you start crying, that is like a child ego state. So we all need to understand, first of all, when you're communicating with anybody else, you need to first figure out or measure which ego state they are operating in, whether it's adult, parent, or child, and your response needs to be appropriate. As we said in the video, it is one second. In the sense that the person could be operating from a parent state, and if you respond in a child state, then it's a transaction which is kind of cohesive and which kind of makes sense because the person is operating from a state and you're responding from that state, from the complementary stage. If the person responds from another state, there's a parent talking, and you give a response from an adult state, sometimes it can become an issue. So if I'm communicating with you, I can choose to address you from any of the three states. And you can reply in turn from any of your three states. So what we call as cross communication is where there is a problem. But if the exchange of communication, which is happening day on, is called a transaction. When you and I transact, I signal a recognition of it. That means remember that communication is a form of recognition. Even when somebody says a hello to me, or even somebody raises their hand to say hi to me, it's a form of recognition. I know that I see you and I'm kind of validating your existence. This is called a stroke in transactional analysis. And people respond to strokes. That's why they say that even if you laugh at, you smile at somebody, or just nod your head, it kind of becomes a validation for the other person, and it really helps them. Now we come to groups. Now, when people are transacting groups or pairs, they use time in various ways, which can be listed and analyzed. So there's a time structuring analysis. We don't want to get into this, and we'll move on to the next one. Now, what are the key ideas? The key ideas are that as a part of a script, we have this life script that we have. Sometimes when we grow up, we go into relationships or situations where we reenact what we saw our parents were doing when we were children. So if you look at it, many times you'll handle situations the way your parents used to handle without even realizing this. And it's somebody else who can point it out to you that your behavior is resembling your mother or your father very strongly. And that kind of a thing comes as a surprise to you. Now, we need to look at this relationship where people function only in a certain way. It's a fixed way. That is called symbiosis. So young children, we may notice that in our family, certain feelings are encouraged. while others are prohibited. But there are a lot of families where children are not allowed to say that, oh, I'm angry, okay, or I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling restless. And sometimes, you kind of suppress these feelings, and only certain feelings. Oh, I'm feeling good, I'm happy, I'm positive. Actually, we need to understand that there are no such thing as good and bad emotions. Emotions are emotion is what you're feeling, and those families which allow all emotions to be expressed will lead to people kind of feeling more positive, and those which we suppress and we feel that they are kind of inauthentic, or we trying to downplay those feelings, and in adult life these are the feelings which can create problems. So again, here I think I just want to focus on this concept of game. A game is a repetitive sequence of transaction in which both parties end up experiencing racket feelings. That means, so if we experience a feeling, we store it up rather than expressing. So if I keep on suppressing my anger, it over a period of time it becomes a buildup of anger, and that becomes hostility, or it becomes rage. And actually it's better to express our emotions moment you are experiencing them. And many times it's people even play these games without realizing that they're doing this, and that is a trick. Now so the tools of TA are designed to help people achieve autonomy. What is the real goal of every human being? The real goal of every human being is to become a fully functional adult, where we function in a way without having to depend on others, and we kind of make our life work for us. And that is the meaning of the word autonomy. So what are the components of autonomy? The component of autonomy are awareness, spontaneity, and a capacity for intimacy. I would like to touch on this a bit. Awareness is I need to be aware of myself, and I need to be aware of people around. That means I need to learn to pay attention what people are doing, how they are standing, how they are talking, what they are possibly feeling. So I need to invest energy into understanding other people. Now, if all my focus is outward, not inward, that's a problem. I need to also focus inward. So I need to be not only aware of what other people are doing, I need to be aware of what I'm doing. And this self-awareness becomes very critical as we are growing older, because you need to be aware of what are your changes, you need to be aware of what are my problem areas, you need to be aware of what are my strengths. So more the awareness, better the function. The second part is spontaneity, and I think this is very important. We don't need to get into relationships in a structured fashion or in a predetermined fashion. You need to respond to situations very spontaneous. For example, while we are playing this video, the audio shut off, the audio didn't come through. Now I am not planning that the audio is not going to go through, but spontaneously I need to make sure get it fixed and keep on with the flow. So I think this whole idea of being spontaneous means that I'm in the moment. I'm there dealing with the problem as it is happening. Now, if I'm not spontaneous, I'll be totally flustered and I'll lose the way forward. So I think this focus on spontaneity is very, very important. And the third part is this capacity for intimacy. We need to understand that when you were a child, you are attached to your parents. As you grow older, you get attached to friends and people in college and so on and so forth. As you grow a little older, you have this group of friends who become close to you. It may be four, it may be 10, but there are people who connect with you, and you develop this need to talk to them, speak to them, connect with them, keep in touch with them. So this capacity for intimacy becomes important. And then we get into romantic relationship, where you need to develop affection, love, connection with one person. And that need for intimacy is very critical for human growth and human survival. So this capacity for intimacy is very important. And this capacity for intimacy can only develop when you connect with other people. So I think this ability of awareness, spontaneity, and capacity is very, very critical in human life. So here I am at the end of my brief chat, and I thank you once again for giving me this opportunity. So this is a little bit of about Talk to Me. Talk to Me is our mental health NGO, and in case anybody wants to connect, we are here. Thank you very much for this great opportunity.
Thank you, Narendra sir. We do have some questions here that we can ask, and I'm also simultaneously looking at the live chat to see if any of your viewers or audiences are putting in questions. So with your permission, if I could pose my questions to you, or the questions that have come before this session today,
Sure.
please do give us some answers. So this was pretty descriptive about transactional analysis, and you mentioned the idea of ego states that is a prominent concept. So the fact that we can recognize a parent and adult and a child ego state, just having awareness about these ego states, how can it help somebody to have more effective transactions within their family?
So I think, as I was saying, that if you look at your own family, I don't know about others, but let me talk about my own family. My parents didn't believe in any kind of screaming, shouting, raving, ranting, beating up, pulling out the belt, locking the door, nothing of that stuff. They are very kind, peaceful human beings, and they allowed you to flower and all that. They allowed you to function. They allowed you to do your best, and whatever. Now, when I grew up and I had a child, uh, I have two children. I implemented those same rules. Like my children were allowed to flower, be whatever. They were never shouted at and all that. Now, what I'm trying to say that first of all, your experiences in childhood really impact your experiences as you're growing older, and they impact your whole life. So I think every parent needs to understand that the way they bring up their children is very, very critical. That's one part of it. Now, how do our relationships get impacted in the family? What I want to highlight is, you, like I said earlier, you need to pay attention. So let's say you have two parents, you have two grandparents at home. You'll find that grandparents are normally kinder than your parents to you, and parents will be a little stricter because they're implementing authority. But if you ask your parents how were grandparents to you, they'll say they were very strict and they didn't allow us to do. So what happens is that person who was a parent once upon a time, when they become grandparents, they become even more kinder and understanding and supportive and all. So we need to understand that people are not static. People are dynamic. Relationships are dynamic. Human beings are dynamic. So you are not the same person you were 5 years back, or you're not going to be the same person 10 years down the line. People keep evolving. Now we keep holding on these images of people that he's like this or she's like this. We need to forget that. And as I said, the idea is to understand where your parent is coming from, and if you respond. So if a parent thinks that he's talking to a child, so when you're 6, 8, 10, 12, you'll find that I've had experiences where the father said, oh, now he's grown up, I cannot shout at him. A parent has come and told me this. Now, if the son carries in his head that my father only shouts, the father has actually stopped shouting. They said, "Bachcha bada ho gaya hamara, usko chillana nahi hai." But if the child doesn't respond, he's still holding on this grudge and this angst and this frustration. There'll be a cross communication. So we need to this whole thing of being in the present. That, well, my father shouted 5 years back, and till today I'm holding on that grudge and anger. It's going to be a problem. So I think the focus is on being in the moment and responding accordingly. According to me, the best relationships are where people talk as adults. Now, it's very difficult because your parent has to become an adult and treat you like an adult and respond to you like an adult. Now, children also, because we kind of, in India, fortunately, both ways, I look at it both ways. We are told to hero worship our parents. Okay? Parents are like gods or demigods, which is absolutely okay. But they are also human beings. We need to remember that they're human beings. And if you can have a reasonable adult conversation, your parents are pretty intelligent. They've lived for 50, 60 years. They've survived. They succeeded. They brought you up. They understand you. They are going to have a conversation. So I think children need to first get out this thing that here's a human being and he's also my parent, he or she. And let me have an adult conversation. I think it will work. So focus should be on developing adult relationships.
Yes, sir. That's a very relevant point you raised, and I think very significant for our student audiences here, because our student community is in that age of between 18 to 23 to maybe 30 and above, and then we have a general audience amongst the staff and the faculty. So very relevant point that you raised, that between grandparents and parents, it's parenting 2.0, a second round, and then knowing which ego state is happening as you have your conversations with them can certainly be very helpful. Okay. Another question that has come about is, what are some common transactions that people come to you with as families in amongst your clientele, and what are some examples which would be interesting for our audiences to understand that yes, these are transactions and people go to a therapist with such interpersonal communication as presenting complaints?
So if I look at parents, most parents say, okay, our child just doesn't listen to us, and they kind of block us, or they are not willing to even give it a patient here. And kind of that I'm sharing my experiences and so on and so forth, and they are not willing to even give me some a kind, at least a listening ear. That is one issue. When it comes to young people, they feel that our parents are a century old and they don't really understand anything, or they were living in a non-digital world, and we are the digital generation, and we can do much more and all that. Technology has impacted lives a lot. I think the other big issue which I feel is a lot of parents complain about that our kids spend 4 to 6 hours or 8 hours on gadgets, and they don't even spend 10 minutes sitting and chatting with us. So I think this whole concept of chatting with somebody who's far away, some other city or some other planet also, for example, I don't know, if not across the Atlantic, but not really taking out 5 minutes to sit by your family and having a chat. I think that's the second big issue. The third is these lifestyle things. So there are common concepts in psychology which says that have a structured life, have goals, clear-cut goals, avoid randomness in your day-to-day life.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
you know, uh, 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 Focus on what you want out of your life. Talk to somebody when you have a problem. So these certain basic things, common sense ideas are being debunked. So if somebody says you must sleep 6 to 8 hours a day, a lot of students think this is utter bullshit, and they will not study throughout the year, and the last 1 month they are not sleeping for more than 2 3 hours. I think they destroy themselves in the bargain, because your brain is overloaded, and actually you blank out, and you really mess up your sleep cycle and your body chemistry, and you really end up falling sick mentally, physically, emotionally, always. So certain, I think it's about understanding. You need to understand how uh, these transactions that we are talking about, that I need to learn to see. Even when we are doing this presentation, I need to learn to listen to other people before I respond. I think the level of impatience which has developed in our culture, in our community, in young people, is that before the other person has stopped even speaking a few words, you're ready with an answer. So you don't really hear or listen to others. We listen with the intent to answer rather than with the intent to understand. So I think this understanding can only develop in relationships when people genuinely, like I said, are in the moment, paying attention, being mindful, and so on and so forth. So I think primarily relationships can only be effective when you feel respected. So I think students want to be respected by professors. Professors want to be respected by students. But if I don't respect my students, or my students don't respect me, I'll block that, and I don't allow that relationship to develop. So I think any relationship is a two-way process.
Keeping with the point that you raised, there has been in the last 2 decades very rapid technological advancements. Value systems are more different than what it must have been two decades ago. So, what do you see in terms of family dynamics being affected or family dynamics being changed vis-a-vis rapid technological
Uh, See, I think family dynamics, according to me, family is a core unit of support, even today in India. So I know we all saw that young people who were earlier living in cities, when they lost their job, or when they got a salary cut, pay cut, whatever, or when somebody had a ill parent at home, somebody who had COVID and all that, people rush back home. And so if you lost your job, you went back home. If you had somebody sick at home, you left your job and you took time off. And I think India really demonstrated that really our strength is in this family values and relationships that we have. So I don't think personally, this is my personal opinion. I mean, everybody can have a different opinion. I don't think family dynamics or family relationships have been destroyed yet in India. I think we still hold family as the core unit of our society, which I think is a great thing, which I think is a very, very valuable thing we should hold on to. At the same time, when you say that, when you say that technology has changed our lives, so the way the technology has changed our lives can be used positively or negatively. Today, you're sitting somewhere else, and I'm sitting somewhere else, and we are both having a chat. We are talking to each other. Without technology, I don't know who you are, and you don't know who I am. I mean, we would not be able to connect. It's very simple. I mean, I'm in my city, you're in your city, and we are disconnected. But the fact that you can see me, I can see you, it's a great advantage, and we can have this conversation. At the same time, if I'm going to spend, I can only speak for myself. If I do 10 such sessions from morning to night, at the end of it, I don't want to talk to my wife or my child or anybody. I'm totally like my brain is out. So I think we need to understand that anything in excess really doesn't work out. So I think the other key concept of psychology is moderation. Whatever you do needs to be done in moderation. So if we can figure that out and make this as a thing. Now, I also want to highlight here that many times family conflicts. So I was just seeing a client where she told me that there's a fight in the family over property, and initially it was a fight between the adults, and it was just restricted to the adults over division of property. But now when and the cousins and everybody is very interconnected, but now all of these kids have grown up and they become adults, and they have had to take sides. They have to take side over, should I go with my parents or should I go with my cousin brother and cousin sister? Should I side with this particular side of the family or that particular side of the family? And that has kind of created a rift in the family. So many times, conflicts will lead to this whole thing of transaction, where earlier you had a adult kind of a transaction. Today it's more like it's a parent thing. How can they do this to us? Or I'm going to show them. I'll make sure that I'll break his bone. That's a very childlike reaction. So I think it definitely has an impact on relationships if you are not able to manage conflicts.
Yes, and we here at Symbiosis, we do have such cases that come to us as counselors on campus. We do listen to such instances where uh, the children have had to face consequences of what was not initially their issue, but somebody else's issue in the family. But they come and talk to us about, oh, I wish I could talk to my cousins, or I wish I could explain something more to my parent. You did bring up the idea of loss of relationships or people drifting apart. Now, post pandemic, many families have had to endure losses in terms of either bereavement or death, or somebody's employment situation has changed as a result of what happened during the pandemic. We do have presentations of loneliness or some strains that have come in between generations. So, what do you suggest to our students or our faculty or our general audience either? What are some ways they can have a mindset where they rebuild their relationships or they have better connection with their families now that we are bouncing back from COVID-19, hopefully?
So if the question is that I'm going through loneliness, or I'm feeling a sense of bereavement, or I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling triggered, I my first advice is reach out to a counselor or a mental health expert and kind of discuss with them, because I think many of these situations, there are no pat answers or there are no ready-made answers where I can say one thing and it will apply to everybody. So I think we need to understand that our lives are unique, and we're individuals and different things work for us. So there are no short gap solutions over here, which I don't want to kind of pan it out and everybody think, oh, we got a solution. Not really true. Number one. Second thing is, yes, loss is a integral part of life. I think we need to all understand that things keep on changing, evolving, and we all need to kind of adapt to changes. That's the only thing a human being can do. So when the pandemic came on, people struggled to kind of sit at home, and now when the pandemic is going, people are struggling to kind of get out of the house. So I think every change, as I said, has a consequence. So we need to understand that, and sometimes these consequences can be global. these consequences can be beyond our imagination. So one simple example I can share over here. We say that India is a poor country and people are struggling and all that. But you'll be surprised that a waiting time for a car today is 2.5 years in this country. If you want to buy a new car, you have to wait for 2.5 years before you can get a car of your choice. So if it's a poor country, this is a little amazing. I mean, so because everybody wants to buy a car and make sure that they have transport of their own, because in COVID they experienced this sense of not having public transport and things like that. So you must understand that sometimes these changes can have far-reaching consequences on our lives, and we may not understand sometimes, or we may downplay, or we are not really sure how it is impacting, but it's very, very critical. So if you're feeling loneliness, if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling alone, if you're feeling helpless, make sure that you reach out to therapists and counselors. I also feel that a lot of people have reconnected. So I don't want to paint a very dark and a sad picture.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
A lot of people went home and spent 6 months with their family, and kind of relationship flowered. People went to their hometowns and met their old girlfriend, and suddenly they are marrying their old girlfriend. So I don't think such a bad thing. Things have been, they kind of pan out in different ways for different people.
Yes, yes, sure. I agree completely. Things were not all bleak. Some good things have also happened with families spending more quality time together or children being homeschooled. There have been some good things as well. So the theme for this year, for the by the UN for this year's International Day of Families is families and urbanization. So, what do you think is the role of urbanization for families today, and what are some things our students or our audiences can actually um, consider that yes, urbanization plays a role in my family dynamics?
Sorry, I didn't get the question. If you can just
So, the
elaborate.
theme for this year for the International Days of Families is families and urbanization. Now, many of our students at Symbiosis, or many of us faculty, our staff, or our general audience watching today, how does this concept of urbanization apply to them, and how can they consider this concept in their family dynamics?
I'm still blank. No, I think I'm not getting the question. So let me put it. Let me try to understand. So urbanization basically will kind of, it's a what should I say, that urban people come to cities to seek employment, and kind of, because a lot of other areas which are non-urban or which are rural or tier 2 tier 3 cities, they may not get jobs, or they may not get an kind of a job that they want. So urbanization is a financial decision, according to me. It's like you come to a place to work and to make money and so on and so forth. But you're leaving people home behind. So just because you have moved to a metro, so a lot of young people say move to Bangalore, where it's a city with a lot of young people, but they have families back home and they have people back home, and they are not going to move to Bangalore because, well, they have a life there. So I think urbanization does lead to certain amount of disruption, where you kind of disconnect from your family for a period of time, and you come and live away. It's like earlier people used to go to Gulf countries to earn money, and their wives would live behind in the villages for 15, 20, 30 years. So I think similar concept where you are kind of, it's a financial decision which can impact relationships. But I also think in this context of making money, like I said, during the pandemic, a lot of people. So I was talking to somebody in the US, and that person was telling me that whichever store she's going to, she's finding that there is this help wanted, people wanted, and big stores are not having people working. And where you had earlier 100 people as salespeople, they now have only 2, 3, 5, 10. And there's huge. So a lot of people have left their urban jobs and moved back to their small towns. And they are starting a small business there, or finding employment over there and all. So I think what has happened is the concept of urbanization earlier was that people moved to places for work, making money and sending money back home. And suddenly, I think a lot of people are realizing that money is not really everything for us, or money is not really making me happy, or money is actually having a consequence of me disconnecting from people around me, and I want to be reconnected to the family, or I want to be spending time with people whom I love and care for. And so they're making this choice of going back. So what I think is, the good thing is, maybe a lot of people will go connect back with their families, or they may kind of bring the family to the urban area where they are living. So I think it may kind of be a more holistic kind of a life, rather than focusing on one and neglecting the other. I think the new lesson for everybody could be that, well, I want to have money and family, or I want to have family first, and then whatever money I have, I'll make do with it, or whatever. This is my thought on that.
Yes, yes. Now, at Symbiosis International University, that is across all our campuses, we have students from very different cultural backgrounds or different social backgrounds also. What are some ways in which they can have better interpersonal transactions, as your word would say, or effectiveness, either with their peers or maybe with their own families?
I think as an institute, maybe you all could have small group interactions. So every evening, maybe 15 people can get together over a cup of chai and introduce themselves, and and kind of talk a bit about themselves. So I think, see, intimacy is a function of knowing the other person. So
Yes.
if you can, I mean, as an institute, it can be that 15 people meet, they talk a bit about themselves, talk about what they think is good about them. So it can be made a fun thing where you have certain trick questions, people give answers. So it's like a game thing where people kind of connect. So I think that will help. That's one thing. The second thing is, I think sports is a great way of connecting. So whenever people come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, if everybody's playing football together, or everybody's playing cricket together, or whatever, I think the connection is different. So people can bond over some. And the third is, it's relationships are a function of time. Initially, there's awkwardness. We don't know each other. We don't talk to each other. And gradually, as you spend time, you form friendships. So I think the third factor is time. The fourth is kind of, uh, over a period of time, you kind of gravitate towards certain kind of people who resemble you, or who have similar interests to you. And
Right.
you can, so most, I think, organizations have these different clubs, and all people with similar interests gravitate. So that's so I think it's a lot of active involvement, and a lot of game theory or social bonding theory can be used to make it happen.
Sure, I'm sure all our students listening today would be happy, and this evening everybody's chai conversations would be such activities also. Okay, so the UN is going to commemorate the International Days of Families as the International Year of Families in the year 2024. And it's going to highlight mega trends such as technological change, migration, more about urbanization, and also the role of demographic and climate change in lieu of what will happen with families going from here on. So we also call ourselves the symbiosis family because we believe family may not be just your blood connections. Even an organization celebrates a motto called as Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, or the world is my family. So what are some proactive conversations we can have with such mega trends that are going to be highlighted in the year 24 for this very occasion, International Year of Families?
I think, I mean, I'm just thinking off my head. You could invite, you have people who are from different backgrounds. You can ask some of those students to invite their parents to the campus, and where these parents can share their stories. So people get an awareness of what different parents have gone through, and to bring their children to this place, or to this area. I mean, a lot of parents, like, for example, I'm a first generation learner. My parents were uneducated because they had to give up they are from Sindh, which is in Pakistan now, and they had to come here, and they had to give up their studies. They were kids, but they ensured that I, as a child, get a good education, and they kind of really fostered that thing. So if kids can hear their parents' stories of what they've been through, because we sometimes see people through filters. Like, you look at a person and say, oh, he looks like a dumb person, but actually when that person starts talking, they may be much more smarter than you can ever think or imagine to be. So I think this breaking this barrier of communication is one. That's one. Second thing, when you hear different stories, it opens up your eyes and mind to what possibilities are there in life. So I think that's the second thing I would like to do. Third, maybe you should involve your students in doing something for their respective parents or parents as a whole. I mean,
Yes.
you can kind of create some event where all students take part and
Mm.
create an event for parents to come and attend. And this is their way of paying back to their families. So some of these things you could do. Or you could come up with a drive where, if you find that, a bunch of 50-50 students can go to certain towns where they are from and go and do something for that town rather than doing for individual families. They can go and do
Mm.
something creative, something positive for the entire town. So use this, harness this collective energy of people and make them look at doing something more positive with their lives rather than just being.
That's an excellent idea. An entire drive where we address families of one entire community. So the student community then engages with these other communities where several families can see some solidarity or some kind of empowerment. That's a great idea, sir. Okay, so Narendra sir, this was enriching. Thank you for giving us your time. It
I
was a
hope so.
wonderful presentation. But don't go just yet. I am joined by Dr. Girija Mahale. She's the head of the Department of Symbiosis Center for Emotional Wellbeing. And we wish to share some things together with you. So do please stay on.
Sure,
And
sure.
here she is. Over to you, Girija ma'am.
Thanks, Sucheta, and thank you, Narendra ji, for coming to us and sharing your experiences and talking about transactional analysis in a simplified manner to our audience. So, as you can see, the Symbiosis Center for Emotional Wellbeing, carries out various measures to ensure good emotional well-being of individuals within Symbiosis as well as within the community. And one of the initiatives that we have thereby undertaken is to launch an academic program, because I believe education is a very powerful tool in inculcating mental health within the population, as the subject of mental health is very stigmatized in our community. And so we've come up with a 3-year undergraduate degree program, BSc in mental health, which we have launched from this year. I'm very happy and delighted to announce this program to our audience. Please spread the word around. There's an entire YouTube video which talks about the various facets of the program. The program is truly multidisciplinary in nature and holistic, where courses from different faculties like law, humanities, and basic sciences have been incorporated to bring about an holistic understanding of mental health. As mental health, we all know, cross sections with various dimensions of our life. And the best part of the program, according to me, is its experiential component. As the students will get to work with the entire team of mental health professionals who are working with the community. We also have a medical college within Symbiosis. So there's a department of psychiatry within our medical college. There's an entire outreach team which works with various villages around Lovely, and thereby also providing the opportunity for students to work with the rural community as well as with the urban community. And we are also happy to announce that we are soon going to come up with a child learning and development center as well as part under our SKU, and which will be based off at Model Colony, where we will be having a multidisciplinary team to deal with children of having different abilities. So that's all from me. I'd once again like to thank Mr. Kinger for joining us today and having such a wonderful discussion on the occasion of International Day for Families.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I have been keeping an eye on the live chat. So far, there are no new questions from the audiences. So how did you feel talking to us today? And what do you feel with this announcement that Dr. Girija has shared?
I'm very happy. I think what she spoke about, this whole factor of stigma in our country needs to really be looked at. And that was one of the reasons we formed Talk to Me, where we want to kind of deal with mental health in a very focused manner. So I think very critical. I think India really needs much more mental health services. And it's time that we all wake up and use these, develop our functioning on that scale. The third, I think I love talking to students because I think it's great. You get young people with a lot of energy that really helps us. So thank you. I really thank you for reaching out and giving me this opportunity. Once again, thank you.
Okay, just to remind people, since this was a conversation around families today, if you're feeling triggered or if you're feeling that you would like to talk to somebody about what happened today, I'm going to share an email on my screen now. This is for students within Symbiosis. You can reach out to your campus counselor. It is mindhelp@siu.edu.in. To talk to Narendra sir, he showed his contact details earlier before. And to the general audiences who are watching this session today, you can reach out to any mental health professional and talk about things that you feel resonated with you as a result of this conversation today. Okay. So thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye.
Right.